Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna. Alrighty. Right. Let's see. Start video. Okay. Here we go. Okay, welcome to the evening class. It's nice to see everybody. And we're going to have our Bhagavad Gita class this evening. And we're going to be talking about the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, beginning with text 18. So we will start off by chanting Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Malaba Giri Bharadhari Gopi Jana Malaba Giri Bharadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Bharadhari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Bharadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radhu Madhava Kunya Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parvatikacharya also Teta Satashi Shibad His Divine Grace Savaya Chalananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Bhagavata Sayam Kun Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturam Ki Jai Jagadavasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Go. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda. Om Agana Timirandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances Under the lotus feet of my spiritual master is divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, we will go immediately to the Bhagavad Gita. And we starting with text 18 in the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, as you'll notice when we read this, that we do, or Krishna does keep repeating the same thing many, many times to make the point so that everyone can clearly understand it. So, karmanya karma yak pashed karmani cha karma yat sabhimam nanusheshu sayukta kritsna karma krit. Karmani in action, a karma in action, ya, one who, pashet, observes a karmani in action, in action, sorry. Cha also, karma, fruit of action, ya, one who saw, he, Buddhiman, is intelligent, Manusheshu, in human society, Saha, he, Yukta, is in the transcendental position, Krishna karma krit, though engaged in all activities. One who sees in action, is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So, let me explain it. And Prabhupada will explain it more clearly in a second. So, one who sees in action and action in inaction is actually appears to be a contradiction. But a person who acts in Krishna consciousness is inactive karmically. Okay? So that's how inaction and action. So in other words, no karma in karma. Karma means work, and karma in another context means a reaction. So there's, just to put it in more simple terms, one who sees no reaction in Krishna conscious actions, and one who sees a karmic reaction in apparently inaction in this world, because no one could be inactive, that person is intelligent. So Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport, a person acting in Krishna consciousness is naturally free from the bonds of karma. In other words, he's acting, but he's inactive karmically. His activities are all performed for Krishna. Therefore, he does not enjoy or suffer any of the effects of work. Consequently, he is intelligent in human society, even though he is engaged in all sorts of activities for Krishna. Akarma means without reaction to work, which is what I just described. So if you talk about akarma, means without reaction. Although, in another context, akarma can mean without action. Sounds confusing. The impersonalist seizes fruitive activities out of fear, so that the result in action may not be a stumbling block on the path of self-realization. But the impersonalist knows rightly his position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Because everything is done for Krishna, he enjoys only transcendental happiness in the discharge of the service. Those who are engaged in this process are known to be without desire for personal sense gratification. The sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune from all sorts of reactionary elements. Text 19. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjitaha ganagni dagda karmanam tamahu panitam buddhaha. Yasha, one who sarve, all sorts of samarambha, attempts, kama, based on desire for sense gratification, sankalpa, determination, varjitaha, are devoid of, jnana, of perfect knowledge, agni, by the fire, dagda, burned, karmanan, whose work, tam, him, who declare, panditan, learned, buddhaha, those who know. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So in other words, because he's using his intelligence to only engage in Krishna consciousness, then the reactions of his work are gone. because he's directed by perfect knowledge, which here is described as a fire. Purport. Only a person with full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratificatory propensities, it is to be understood that he has burned up the reactions of his work in perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is actually learned, who has attained to such perfection of knowledge. Development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship to the Lord is compared to fire. Such a fire, once kindled, can burn up all kinds of reactions to work. Let me just unpack this one sentence here. Whoops, I forgot to mute everybody. Give me 1 second and I will mute everybody. Sometimes we forget to do that and people become unmuted. Okay, I have done it. So let me unpack this one thing. Here it says, only a person with full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Let me give you an example. One time, and I was listening to a class or a discussion Prabhupada was having, and someone was talking about money and Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada began to talk in such a way that for an ordinary materialist who was listening to Prabhupada would think, well, he's just interested in money. Prabhupada said, we need so much money. And then Prabhupada started to talk about how much money was spent in all the different temples of that time. And it was actually quite a large amount of money, even by today's standards. I mean, he was talking about Los Angeles. They were spending $10,000 a month. New York, they were spending $5,000. Of course, nowadays they're spending a lot more than that. But the total was quite a large amount. And Prabhupada was saying it takes a lot of money to maintain such a big institution. So from a materialist perspective, or from someone who doesn't have his telephone off, which I should, from a materialist perspective, it appears that Prabhupada's interested in money. You know, what is this spiritual person talking about money? Well, the reason he's talking about money is because the money is being used in Krishna's service. If something is being used in Krishna's service, that which is being used in an authorized fashion in Krishna's service becomes spiritualized. So whether you're talking about money or even such a thing as sex, for example, Krishna says, Kamo Asmi, I am sex life according to the rules and regulations for having Krishna conscious children. That becomes spiritualized. Not practically, but any activity that is done in Krishna's service according to Krishna's directions and the directions of Krishna's devotee is actually spiritual. It becomes transformed. Or even a person who is engaged in Krishna's service, his physical body becomes transformed into a spirituality. Why is that and how is that? Okay. Why is that? Because Krishna does it. That's very easy. And how is it? Because Krishna is expert, like an expert electrician who can change electricity to heating energy or cooling energy, air condition, reverse cycle air condition. He can change heating energy, electrical energy into heating or cooling by a simple manipulation. So Krishna's energy is one, and Krishna can transform matter to spirit, spirit to matter. He's expert. So that's how it happens. That's Krishna's exactly how Krishna does it mechanically. I'm not going to describe, nor could I understand, because he's God. He can do all those things. I can't even understand what's happening in an atom. I can't even understand what's happening in a cell in a body. But we do know that whatever Prabhupada did was spiritual, even if it meant dealing with money or bargaining to buy a property, like Prabhupada bargained to buy our Detroit temple property. It was very interesting how Prabhupada bargained. He first asked the owner to donate it to us. And then after that, Prabhupada offered what they call a lowball price. I mean, a very low price, and Prabhupada got the property. Prabhupada also was bargaining with the Dinapan people. Dinapan was the printer that first printed Prabhupada's Krishna book and some of the Bhagavatams, a Japanese printer. And Prabhupada understood how to negotiate perfectly with them, using negotiation skills that would normally require for someone to have a PhD in negotiation. I'll tell you how Prabhupada did it. Prabhupada took a very hard line with them and gave such a low price that it practically caused them to have heart attacks. And then his disciple, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, said, I'll mediate between both of you. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj gave a little higher price than Prabhupada, and people were so relieved, even though they were hardly making any profit, or maybe they didn't make a profit, that they accepted a super low price. So Prabhupada was expert in strategy. So from someone who doesn't know much about spiritual life or about Krishna, one may think that that's simply mundane. It's not, because anything used in Krishna's service becomes spiritualized. The person using it in Krishna's service becomes spiritualized. And the result of the service, or the result of the activity, becomes spiritualized. Interesting verse in the Bhagavad Gita that states this: Brahmarpanam Brahmahabir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahma Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhanam. By someone offering something to Krishna, then it's like someone putting ghee into the fire, the sacrificial fire, of course. Ghee is purified butter. And therefore, the ghee becomes purified, and the ingredients put in the fire become purified. So that is what happens with a pure devotee. So that's why Prabhupada said, only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. So sometimes what Prabhupada did was a little confusing, not for the devotees, but for those who were not Krishna conscious. They were thinking, what's he bargaining for? He should just be spiritual. What is he using a microphone for? You know, here, right here, you probably can't see, there's a microphone. So what am I using a microphone? What am I using a computer for? It's material. You know, people do criticize like that. And of course, we have this principle of yukta vairagya. When you use something's material in Krishna's service, it becomes spiritualized. And it belongs to Krishna anyway. So text 20, Taktva karma ola sangam nityo nitya tripto nirashayaha karman yabi pravritto pi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Jaktva, having given up, karma, phala, asangan, attachment for fruit of results, nitya, always, triptaha, being satisfied, nirashayaha, without any shelter, karmani, an activity, avipravrittaha, being fully engaged, api, in spite of, na, does not, eva, certainly, kinchit, anything, karoti, do, saha, he. So, translation, abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruit of action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Basically the same point here, that a devotee is not attached to the results of his activities. He's satisfied because he's taking pleasure within. He's independent from the modes of nature. Even though he's acting in this world, he's not getting a reaction, which means fruit of activities. The word fruit of activities refers to the word fruit. And here we're not just talking about apples and oranges, and bananas. We're talking about the results of activities, the fruit. In other words, let's say you work hard all day long, you work in a job, the fruit of your activity is the money, obviously. So because someone is not working for mundane fruits, even though it appears like he's working for mundane fruits, but he's giving the mundane fruits to Krishna. Whatever he has, whatever he offers, whatever he gives away, he's giving to Krishna. And then Krishna himself says that in the Gita. This is called karma yoga. Excuse me. Karma yoga means when you give the results of your activity to Krishna, you connect with Krishna in that way. So Prabhupada explains the freedom, this freedom from the bondage of actions is possible only in Krishna consciousness when one is doing everything for Krishna. A Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of his action. He is not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left to Krishna. Nor is he anxious to secure things, nor to protect things already in his possession. He does, let me unpack that a little bit. So he makes endeavors to protect things, not because they belong to him, but because they belong to Krishna. He makes endeavors to keep this body safe. He goes to a doctor. You understand? He takes his medicine, whatever. He stays away from the virus because he understands the body belongs to Krishna. That's all. It's Krishna's property, so he takes care of it well, but not for his own self. So he's not interested in protecting things because he possesses them. He's interested in protecting things because Krishna possesses them. He does his duty to the best of his ability and leaves everything to Krishna. In other words, man proposes, God disposes. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. That's karmic reaction. It is as though he were not doing anything karmically. It's not that he just sits back and I'm doing nothing. This is the sign of akarma, or actions without fruit of reactions. It's the same point that Krishna's made again and again in these verses. Very important to understand. Krishna conscious activities have no karmic reactions to them, good or bad. But there is a spiritual reaction to them, which is you get happiness, you get knowledge, and you get eternal life. Pretty good. That's a pretty good bargain. Because if you talk about fruit of things in this world, what is the result you get from them? Well, you may get money, material goods, but you lose them ultimately. And so what you get from Krishna consciousness is in your eternal bank account. As we read before in the Gita, that there is no loss or diminution, even from one lifetime to another. You pass away, that means you die. You die and you take your Krishna consciousness with you. As simple as that. And next life, if you're very fortunate, you're born in a family of transcendentalists, Krishna conscious transcendentalists, and you're automatically attracted to yogic practices and principles. So those devotees or people who found themselves automatically attracted, let's say to being a vegetarian, automatically attracted to doing yoga, automatically attracted to chanting, automatically attracted to the form of Krishna, means past life. You, in your last life, were executing Krishna consciousness. Like I gave that example about myself, not to toot my own horn, so to speak, is that the first time I went in the temple and I saw people dancing around Tulsi Devi, intellectually, it was hard for me to grasp. From a Western perspective, people dancing around a bush and bowing down to a bush, like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom or something like that. But from an emotional heart perspective, I actually recognized this is what I was doing before in some past existence, past life, whatever. And it was just, wow. So there was this disparity between my Western brain, Western culture, and whatever intellectual training I'd gotten before, and then what was going on in my heart. It was really interesting. Later on, my Western brain became more acclimated, and I was able to understand things. But the first time I walked in the temple, I couldn't intellectually grasp what was happening. Now I can, after 50 years in the Hare Krishna movement, I hope. But at that time, it was recognition. Like they say, déjà vu. Déjà vu means I saw it before. I was there before. And I felt great. So much ecstasy, it was unbelievable, although I could not identify intellectually the ecstasy. So this is actually really important. So there's no loss. any action, therefore devoid of Krishna consciousness, binding on the work, and is the real aspect. And that is the real aspect of V-karma, as explained here before. So anyway, so whether you have karma or V-karma, it's all temporary. And by Krishna consciousness, which is in action karmically, it's all wiped out. Your bad and good karma is wiped out. And you get Krishna karma, or eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Right? Pretty good deal. Okay, and you never forget it. Once you've been exposed to Krishna consciousness, that's it. Your material life has gone down the drain. Because every time you try to make an attempt to forget Krishna or to enjoy it outside of spirituality, then it just doesn't work anymore. It's dry. It's just very dry. It's like chewing the chewed. It's like taking some gum that's been chewed out. All the sugar is gone, and you just keep chewing it, hoping you're going to get some taste from it. And you remember how when you first got the gum, it was delicious. But now it's just like hurting your teeth to chew it. So, interesting. Next verse. Nirashiryata chitatma tyakta sarva parigraha Shriram kevalam karma kurvan apnoti kilvisham. Nirashihi, without desire for the result, yata, controlled, chitta atma, mind and intelligence, chakta, giving up, sarva, all, parigraha, sense of proprietorship over possessions, shariyaram, in keeping body and soul together, kevalam, only, karma, work, kurvan, doing, na, never, apnoti, does acquire, kilbisham, sinful reactions. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, giving up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. Let me explain what bare necessities of life doesn't mean that he goes around bare or barefooted or whatever without clothes. That means we all have certain needs. And I'm not talking about desires. Desires are basically unlimited. So we need certain things, and everybody's needs are different. And we've talked about this before, and if anyone's interested, they could watch my empathic communication course, which I talk about needs and the desire to fulfill the needs, or the unfulfilled needs are behind every single feeling we have or action we have. So we have certain needs. We have needs for air, food, light, water. I mean, for example, sometimes I'm in a place that's very polluted and I can't breathe properly. So I have a need for fresh air. I have a need for recreation. I have a need for fun. I mean, these are basic, bare necessities of life. Like Prabhupada, every day he exercised. He took a long morning walk, and very quick. None of us could keep up with Prabhupada. We had to run to keep up with Prabhupada. Prabhupada every day took massages, basically for several hours a day. Because he needed it for his health. Prabhupada had his own cook because Prabhupada needed it for his health. So we need so many things. So we have to be able to identify what are necessities and what things are just like too much, over endeavor, over collecting. For example, you may need a room and a bed to sleep on, but you don't need a 40-room mansion for yourself, wife, and one kid. You just don't need it. And by accepting more than you need, you become entangled. And we're not just talking karmically. We're talking about wasting so much time maintaining it. You have so many houses, so many rooms, so many cars. I mean, some people like to collect cars, but you just need one good car. You don't need hundreds of good cars. So Just identify what you need just to feel stable and happy. And certain people, like I mentioned before, have different needs. Some people may need to be in families. Now we're talking about varnashram, the ashram. Some people may need to be single. Some people may need to be teachers. Some people may need, now we're talking about the varnas, some people may need to be in charge of something, to be the boss. Some people may need to be doing agriculture, taking care of cows. And some people may need to work with their hands and be doing artistic things, and it really satisfies them to do that. So we have these emotional needs, friendship needs, needs for independence. We need to make our own choices in life. We have a need for, of course, spirituality, Krishna consciousness. So all these needs, other than the spiritual need, we don't talk about the bare necessity in terms of spiritual needs, because there's no limit to the spiritual needs that we have. We can just go on unlimited. But as far as below the spiritual needs, the psychological needs, the mental needs, the emotional needs, all that, we have to take care of them just to be stable, even in spiritual life. So this is what it means by bare necessities. Don't get scared that you're going to be living in the woods, unless you like it. So, I mean, some people like it. So purport, the Krishna conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme. The part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. In other words, if he has some particular talent, ability, then it's actually Krishna's empowering him or giving him the intelligence to do that. Of course, he's deciding to do it. He's getting the credit too. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but only by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna conscious person is always dovetailed with the supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. In other words, his desire is just out of love. Like someone who is in love, they just desire to please the beloved, if it's real love. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action and the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship even over his own body. It's not that we are animals. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession, yet the animal does not protest. It's not that we become like blind followers. Prabhupada's just using a rough metaphor here. Nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna conscious person fully engaged in self-realization has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body or soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating money. He doesn't have to cheat. He should accumulate money through something that is honest and noteworthy and respectable. Not only honest, but respectable. He does not therefore become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. Next verse. Yadrichalabhat santushto dvanvatito samatsaraha samasidavasiraucha kritvapina nibhodyate. Yadricya, out of its own accord, labha, with gain, santushtaha, satisfied, dvandva, duality, aditaha, surpass, vimatsaraha, free from envy, samaha, steady, siddhao, in success, asiddhao, failure, cha, also, kritva, doing, api, although, never, nibhadyate, becomes affected. Translation, he who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. So in other words, there's no over-endeavor for things. So, Krishna's helping me, Krishna's giving me the results of the activities, and freedom from duality. That means, pleasure and pain, happiness, distress, winter and summer seasons, love, hate, just completely free from these material dualities, and does not envy anyone. In fact, the opposite of envy, he feels himself to be lesser than everybody else and also willing to serve everybody. Steady in both success and failure, that's self-explanatory, and never entangled as karmically, although performing actions. Still the same principle. If you perform actions in Krishna consciousness, there's no reaction. You're not entangled by this cycle of actions and reactions. And what do I mean by cycle? Rupa Goswami explains this in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Cycle of reactions and actions means, get ready, let's say I do something that gives a bad result, okay? And so I get the bad result from that. That's called the parabdha karma. Right before I get the bad result, it's called the aparabdha karma. And after I get the bad results, prarabdha karma. And then after all that's over with, I'm still left with the residual desire to do something like that. And that's the kuta and the bija. Kuta means like inclination, bija means like a seed of desire. And that seed fructifies and I do the same thing again, or something similar again, connected with the same sort of activity. So it's like a cycle. And that's entanglement. When you get caught up in a cycle, it's like one of those wheels that little rats have when they're put in a cage. It goes round, 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 and it never ends. In other words, you have the inclination to do some karmic activity, the seed of some karmic activity, you do the activity, you get the result. Part of the result is the seed to do a karmic reaction, a karmic activity again. So it's just like the reaction gives you more impetus to do the same activity again. So it's an unending cycle. We got to break the cycle. It's like obsessive compulsion. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with gains which are obtained of their own accord. He neither begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as is in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood. He does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. However, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the dualities of the material world. Just like myself, because I am serving Krishna, serving Prabhupada, I have to serve, or I've chosen to serve within Prabhupada's institution. So by choosing to serve within Prabhupada's institution, I have engaged in so many activities that may subject me to duality, that some of the activities I may not have chosen to do had I not chosen to serve Prabhupada. I mean, such some of the management activities. Of course, chanting, I love. But sometimes the management is really a headache. But we do that to serve His divine grace to the Prabhupada. And so we get these headaches, I mean, not literally, but figuratively, headaches. And then we accept that for Prabhupada. And so we're not actually disturbed by this duality of something pleasant, something unpleasant. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of heat and cold, or misery and happiness. That's just what I said. I mean, sometimes we have to sit through the meetings, 6 hours, 8 hours of meetings, or 6 hours, 7 hours a day for 2 weeks. And it's not my inclination to do that. But because it's for Prabhupada, I agree to do it, and I do it joyfully because it's doing it out of love for Prabhupada. Like someone working a job for one's family, the job may not be the most pleasant experience for one. Let's say if one's working in a coal mine, and I've never worked in a coal mine, but they're working in a coal mine because they're remembering their wife and family, and they have to maintain their wife and family. So in the same way, we're working for Krishna. So we're doing things sometimes that ordinarily we would not do according to our psychophysical nature. But out of love, we're doing it. So in other words, as Prabhupada says, a Krishna conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. That's a key sentence right there. Let me repeat that. A Krishna conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. So if Krishna wants something, then he doesn't hesitate to do it, even though it may be an austerity. Therefore, he is steady. And we have to undergo so many austerities, just like someone's in charge of a temple. It's an austerity. You may think, oh, I wish I was in charge. I'd be the boss. Well, I tell you, being the boss of a temple is an austerity, but you do it out of love. And when you do it out of love, even though you still understand the austerity of it, you can continue enthusiastically because you know someone you love is being pleased. Therefore, like the work again in the coal mine. Of course, the work in the coal mine is pretty obnoxious, and the work for Krishna being in charge of a temple is nectar. So therefore, he is steady both in success and failure. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. Wow. In other words, fully in transcendental knowledge means faith. One has full faith, because faith is an essential ingredient or the very foundation of transcendental knowledge. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of information. Knowledge means you actually process that information. The way you process the information is you trust the information and you have faith in the information. Isn't it? So, next verse. Gata sangasya muktasya ajnana vastita chitta saha yagyaya charata karma samagram pravaliyate. Gata sangasya, one unattached to the modes of material nature. Muktasya, of the liberated. Jnana avastita, situated in transcendence. Chetasaha, whose wisdom. Yagyaya, for the sake of Yagya, Krishna. Acharataha, acting, karma, work. Samagram, in total. Praviliyate, merges entirely. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendence merges entirely into transcendence. It's true. I mean, what can we say about that? So one who is situated in transcendental knowledge is actually unattached to the modes of nature. We're turning it around a little bit. And because of that and his full faith, his work actually is completely transcendental. That's what this verse says. Prabhupada says, becoming fully Krishna conscious, one is freed from all dualities and thus freed from the contamination of the material modes. He can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position and relationship with Krishna, and thus the mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna, who is the primeval Vishnu. Primeval means original Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom Vishnu expands. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices because sacrifice aims at satisfying the Supreme Person, Vishnu or Krishna. The resultant reactions to all such work certainly merges into transcendence, and one does not suffer material effects. Pretty much the same thing. And here's that verse I quoted a few minutes ago. Very important verse. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagno brahmana tam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhana. Brahma, spiritual in nature. Arpanam, contribution. Brahma, the supreme. Havihi, butter. Brahma, spiritual. Agna, in the fire of consummation. Brahmana, by the spirit soul who Tam offered. Brahma, spiritual kingdom. Eva, certainly. Tena, by him. Gantavyam, to be reached. Brahma, spiritual. Karma, in activities. Samadhana, by complete absorption. And remember, we already gave an explanation for this verse, but now we're going to read Prabhupada's translation. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So just to give a little bit different understanding, it's the same understanding, but it's a little bit different expression of this understanding, that a person absorbed and serving Krishna becomes spiritualized by his absorption and serving Krishna. As a paraphrasing, so you can better understand the verse. The offering that the person makes becomes fully spiritualized by being offered to Krishna, and the results of that offering become completely spiritualized when they're offered to Krishna. In other words, everything connected becomes spiritualized. And as we mentioned before, even the devotee's body becomes spiritualized, even though it remains physical, not eternal body, but it's spiritualized. Like Prabhupada gave the example of putting an iron rod into fire, and the iron rod gets hotter, and eventually can act completely like fire, as long as it remains in the fire, connected with the fire. And when it's disconnected, it gradually cools down. So when we are connected with Krishna, our consciousness gets hotter, and completely spiritualized. But when we disconnect from Krishna, it gets cooler, and more affected by the modes of nature. That's why it's important to keep yourself in the fire of Krishna consciousness. Now, what does that mean, the fire of Krishna consciousness? It means being engaged in Krishna service, like this verse indicates, associating, hearing regularly, chanting with attention, and fixing one's mind on pleasing Krishna, and fixing one's heart on Krishna's lotus feet. Sounds easy. Purport. How activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goals described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for the present, just for the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which a conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds. Let me explain what Prabhupada means. That you're entangled in this material world because you're working fruitively. So the way to get out is to continue the work, not give up the work, but to work for Krishna. So the same work which entangled you before can now disentangle you. And that's exactly what Prabhupada is saying. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities, sacrifices simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Krishna, Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahman, means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called the Brahmajyoti. That's the effulgence coming from Krishna. His spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahmajyoti, but when the Jyoti is covered by illusion or Maya or sense gratification, it is called material. This means forgetfulness of Krishna is material. That's a definition. Or in other words, darkness means the absence of light. That's a metaphor right there. Darkness is the absence of light. There is no such thing as darkness. It is just the absence of light. And there is such a thing as light. The material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering, contribution. The process of consumption, this is exactly what I said before. The contributor and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed. Dovetailed means using in Krishna's service for the cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. In other words, this matter, this computer that I'm using now, or the microphone that I'm using in Krishna's service, it becomes spiritualized. That's why when you go to see Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan, you'll see so many things that Prabhupada used behind a glass case. It's not simply a mundane museum, but these things are been spiritualized because they use in Krishna's service, use in Prabhupada's service for Krishna. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman of the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice in the absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer, or leader of the performance, that's repetitive, what I said before, what Prabhupada said before in the purport, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the supreme Brahman. This is the method of Krishna consciousness. Very important conception. That is, by offering something or doing something for Krishna, everything connected with that offering and thing becomes spiritualized. I know I'm repeating, but just to make the point again, that means the person doing it, the place where it's done, the intention, the actual act itself, the result of the act, and even people who watch the act, everything becomes spiritually enlivened. And that's the secret of Krishna consciousness, called Yukta Vairagya. Vairagya basically means renunciation, or just to tear that word apart, means without passion. Passion means to enjoy something. So, Yukta Vairagya, Yukta means to connect or to accept. It's similar to the word yoga. Yoga means to connect with Krishna. So here you have a combination of these two words. Yukta, connect, without passion. Or, to put it in simple words, is to use something in this world in a very renounced way by using it in Krishna's service, because it belongs to Krishna. Once you understand everything belongs to Krishna, then you can use everything. And when you think it belongs to you, then whatever you use is entangling. So it's a simple adjustment. Just click there in the mind. Everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is meant to be used to please Krishna. Therefore, I can use his microphone, I can use his body, I can do anything that Krishna wants. And then everything becomes spiritualized. So we will take questions now. So tomorrow we'll start with the 25th verse. And let me take you all off of mute, like we normally do. Or take you off of forcible mute, so you can unmute yourselves. Okay, so does anyone have a question? No one has a question. Where's Nalini Khan?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Oh, Joe, good to see you.
Lovely to see you. Beautiful class as always.
Thank you, Joe.
Really enjoying your potency. You were just talking at the end there about how things like microphones and computers become spiritualized if they're used in Krishna's service. Yeah. What does that mean? What does that mean for the computer? What does that mean?
Well, certainly the computer doesn't go back to Godhead. I mean,
no.
that means that the computer is no longer covered by the modes of nature. As I mentioned in a previous class, everything in this world is covered by wet paint. I think you might remember that. So just like if I touch wet paint, let's say, here's the microphone. I think so, you can see the microphone. If this was wet paint, then I would get silver paint on top of my finger. So whatever you come in touch with is contaminated by those modes of nature. And that contamination actually keeps us from coming in touch with the original spiritual nature. something that's uncontaminated. Of course, that doesn't mean the computer is eternal. It's a little bit different category. It means the computer is uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. And because it's being used in Krishna's service, it actually has the effect that if someone comes in touch with the computer, they get some spiritual zing. Just like Prabhupada's remnants. For example, there's injunctions in the scriptures that if one wears the outfits that were offered to the deities, we offer things to the deities, wears the jewelry or the outfits that were offered to the deities, then one gets spiritual energy or enlivened or makes spiritual progress. So we take the remnants from the deities, like every day we have the garlands here in the temple, we have the garlands from the deities and devotees put them on. Sometimes when I put them on, they have some bugs on them, so I get upset. But anyway, so every day we do that and we get spiritually enlivened. So it just means here's something that is manifesting the Shuddha Sattva. Now, prasadam is a different thing. When we offer prasadam, let's say you have broccoli, or for those of you from Fiji, mangoes, or something, chiku fruits, or whatever you'd like to eat. When you offer them to Krishna, they become actually non-different from Krishna in one respect. It's a little bit different than the computer, because I wouldn't want you eating my computer. It'd be a disaster. For me, it would be a disaster. So that's called Yukta Vairagya. That's what it means to become spiritualized. No longer connected with the modes of nature, and because it's being used in Krishna's service, it can emanate the spiritual energy. And just by touching it, the atmosphere. I'll give you a practical example. Many years ago, I was in San Diego and we were having a big festival, and the devotees were chanting and dancing and everything like that. And there was I was distributing books on the outskirts of the festival, and I stopped one gentleman and he said, he didn't even hear the holy names. It was a little distance, and he was saying, "Why am I feeling so happy? I've never felt so happy in my whole life," because the atmosphere around the festival had become spiritualized. And he joked, he thought we were just like burning heaps of marijuana, and that's why he was becoming happy, or intoxicated or whatever. But the point is, they just by coming in touch, like if you come in touch, I mean, for example, when I first met Prabhupada in 1971, of course I did, as I mentioned before, recognize him as my eternal spiritual master, but I just immediately felt like I had gone back to Godhead. I'd never felt like that before in my whole life. He just walked in the room and all the pains, misery, or remembrance of anything in this world just like, boop, disappeared. And I was with Krishna. And it was just like, wow, here I am with Krishna, direct realization. And Rupa Goswami talks about that in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, how by contact with a pure devotee or hearing some ecstatic kirtan, one can get what's called a shadow attachment or connection like that. So that's what's meant by it becomes spiritualized, not that the computer is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge.
But that can happen to inanimate objects. Like you can then get spirit,
yes,
they
inanimate.
have
Yes, it can.
potency.
It actually can happen to inanimate objects too. And also animate objects. No, or animate objects, of course, means entities like you or me. We can also get spiritualized, or our body, anything connected like that. The body can be Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva means pure goodness. Right now, in this world, because we're affected by the modes of nature, our body is influenced by different modes, passion, ignorance, or material goodness, which is a mixture of goodness with some little mixture of the other modes of nature. Good question. Thank you, Joe, for that. Any other question from our many viewers? Any other questions?
Hare Krishna.
Who was that? Sounds like Rishikesh.
Yes,
Who's that?
Gurudev.
Oh, it
Yes,
is
Gurudev,
Rishikesh.
that's me.
I thought I recognized you by your transcendental voice. So you have a
Thank you,
question?
Gurudev. Yeah, I have a question about, I wanted to understand this Abhicharani Bhakti, when Krishna says, Mamchayo Abhicharana Bhakti Yogena Sevate. What does Abhicharani Bhakti mean?
Means pure devotional service. Means without any motivation. Mam Chayo Abhicharana Bhakti Yogena Sevate. Yeah. Means without any material motivation. It's basically a shorthand for Rupa Goswami's verse of Anyavi Lashita Shunyam Jnana Karmanavritam Anukuyena Krishnana Shilana Bhakti Uttamam. Shorthand for devotional service is free of desire for gross or subtle sense gratification, or even the desire for liberation. And it's composed positively of a desire to please Krishna, and one works actively according to what Krishna wants. That's what it means. It's a shorthand for that. Okay?
Yep, thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you. Thank you, Rishikesh. So, do we have any other questions?
Hi Krishna Maharaj, Dhanavad Pranam.
Okay. Who's answering? Who's this?
Can you hear me, Maharaj?
Okay.
Radha.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So Maharaj, you were talking about this Yukta Vairagya. So, and you were talking about dovetailing also the things like which we can use for Krishna's, like for Krishna consciousness and make our senses controlled by that. But Maharaj, like in similar verse, we can see in NOI, like it's talking about like, just accept those things which are favorable and just ignore that thing, like reject that thing that are not favorable.
Right.
So Maharaj, how can I understand like many things comes toward us, and then like maybe my mind says that okay, let's dovetail it with keeping it for Krishna's service, but actually I don't know from inside, is it for my own senses are telling, or just I'm making my senses like so how can I differentiate, Maharaj?
Good question. Actually, things that would be favorable for an advanced devotee may not be favorable for a neophyte. So the way you can tell is by taking association with devotees, and if there's any question about an activity or about some particular object, then revealing your mind and talking to the devotees about it. Do you think it's appropriate that I do such a thing? That's why Rupa Goswami states, Guyam Akyati Prichati. One should engage in loving exchanges, especially revealing the mind and confidence and taking advice from others and hearing from others and helping others in Krishna consciousness. So that's why we have Diksha and Shiksha gurus to help us understand that point, because there's certain things we don't have the adhikar for. I mean, today we were talking about Ramananda Roy. We have one of the devotees here who's an expert dancer. It's not me, I tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was relating how in Jagannath Puri they have these expert dancers called the Devidas who dance for the deities, and they belong to the deities. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you have one personality, Ramananda Roy, who's a man, and he's training up these Devi dasis in different ways, and I'm not going to describe these different ways. He's teaching them how to dance and dressing them and everything like that, and he is able to engage in that level of yukta vairagya, and basically no one else can. Lord Chaitanya said he's the only one who can do that. So he was able to engage in something that for everybody else would throw them into the deepest illusion. Not the dancing I'm talking about, but the man dealing with the ladies. And the reason he was able to deal like that was because he identified himself as a gopi. He fully identified himself as a gopi. Of course, he is an incarnation or avatar of Vishaka, who is a gopi, obviously, one of Radharani's two assistants, Lalita and Vishaka. So he was able to do something with Yukta Vairagya that nobody else could do. And so we all have our limits of what we can engage in Yukta Vairagya. And Krishna really keeps us within our limits. He informs us and doesn't let us, unless we're real enthusiastic. If we exceed our limits, we can be entrapped by the material energy. So one has to know what their adhikar is. Adhikar means what they have a right to do. And if you try to do it, what's that called? The Peter principle? I think it's called the Peter principle, where one arises to the level of their incompetence. Some of you may have heard that, like in the business world, or maybe even in ISKCON. One rises to the level of their incompetence. Just a step below is what you're really competent at. And then they push you up to the next level, and then it's way above your level of ability. That's called the Peter principle. You rise to your level of incompetence. So one has to know what they're capable of doing and what they're incompetent doing. And just go to that level, but not above it, of what you're capable of doing. I mean, it's important that we know what our limitations are, spiritually and materially. Just like if you're lifting weights, you don't lift more weights than you're capable of doing, or else you get a hernia. So this applies in every single field. One should not have an overinflated conception of themselves, spiritually or materially. Actually, a great devotee is always thinking less of themselves, or they're thinking of themselves less, to be more precise. But they're humble. So I think it's time to end now, because we have a morning program, and I am regular in the morning program. Today is Ekadasi, and I did not chant 64 rounds, but, I did 3 times 16, which is all right. Not quite 64 today, because a lot of things came up. We're supervising some construction here, and devotees have their normal way of making life interesting for me. They are very merciful. Devotees are very merciful to me. They keep me engaged in keeping my life interesting. So on that happy note, we'll end here. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same station. Haribol.